Don't you hate making mistakes? Doesn't it drive you crazy? And if you are like me, like you have a moon in Virgo or maybe a sun sign or an ascendant in Virgo, it's even worse because Virgos hate making mistakes because they're perfectionists. They want to get it right. However, being under the sign of Virgo also means that you are of service, that you are trying to heal people. And that's what we really need in this world right now, are a lot more healers. There are a lot of ways in which this whole society and this whole world, the human beings are really out of balance and need healing. So the world actually needs more healers. But in order to do that, you have to step into your mistakes and you have to step into your power. I'm Dr. Michelle Pedicola, founder of Secrets of Life and Death, creator of Secrets of Life and Death, the film series, and Second Chance Secrets. And I am looking for a couple of superstars to join my certification program, Second Chance Certification, which is an opportunity to do a life makeover, to step into what you are really meant to be doing right now. And the cool thing is that this is your life purpose. This is what you're meant to be doing. And when you step into this journey, you grow and you heal and you become who you truly are. Isn't that wonderful? I personally believe that being a coach or a healer or an influencer is the path to enlightenment. It is why we're here, and it is certainly why we are needed right now at this time, to be light workers, to be service people. And so I'm inviting you to join my certification program in order to step into your power, to break the dynamics and the barriers and the habits and the behaviors that have been holding you back, so that you can create a program, a way of healing your clients that really works, that comes from who you are authentically, comes from your own lessons. It comes from your own experience, from everything that you've drawn into your life up until now. You utilize everything. And that's what makes you unique. The problem is that there are zillions of coaches out there, but very few of them really make a difference. A lot of what comes out of coaching schools is pretty much formulaic. And you don't get the results. What I want to do is teach you, is to guide you to discover what your gifts are and what you specifically have to offer, and put it into a dynamic, living program to make it evolve as you evolve and your clients evolve. Does that sound amazing? So if you're interested, in the comments section is a link to my scheduler, and you can go ahead and make a 15-minute appointment and find out more about my program, and we can have a talk. But let's get back to mistakes again. So don't you feel terrible when you make a mistake? What comes up for you? Do you feel defensive? Do you beat yourself up? Do you run away? Do you try and figure out how to blame somebody else? I've done it all. I understand, because if you are a little like me, that is a perfecter, somebody who has to, a perfectionist who has to get it right. It's like there's no middle ground. You either get it right or you go right into the dragon pit. And nobody wants to go into the dragon pit. They have terrible breath. So you resist your mistakes, and then you create a life that avoids mistakes. And what does that mean? That means that you're not taking risks. That means that you're not stepping into your power. That means you are not being authentic. And why do I say that? Well, because to really be yourself, you have to be willing to take risks. You have to be willing to act in a way that you were taught, most likely as a child, not to act, to behave in ways that are dynamic and creative and unlike anybody else. But human beings, as herd animals, we want to be like everybody else so that we'll be accepted, we'll be loved, we'll be appreciated, we'll be safe. Not only is that a sort of in the DNA of human beings, but our parents teach us the same thing. That was certainly what I was taught. My father was afraid of making mistakes. He would go and he would teach. He was teaching people engineering, these high, accomplished people, and he was terrified. And yet he would get through it, and then he would, as he used to say, get out of Dodge quickly, because he didn't want to receive the feedback. He didn't want to face the criticism. Well, he was a Virgo, so Virgo sun, so I can understand that. And he conveyed that pattern to me. Not to mention that, as I told you, I have a Virgo moon. And I grew up being afraid of making mistakes. And I became a perfecter, a perfectionist, and I had to get things right. And I was so afraid of not doing it well enough, because I had 2 older sisters, that I would manipulate my parents into doing this stuff for me, because I was afraid that I wouldn't get it right. That's what growth and evolution require, is for you to be willing to take a risk at getting it wrong. So I want you to take a moment and ask yourself, what are you afraid of getting wrong? What holds you back from taking the next step and saying, I need to do this? Now, I'm personally a very, very determined person, and I will really push myself. But pushing yourself is not the same as taking risks. Pushing yourself is almost always just working harder. And that's what I'm not talking about, working harder. I'm talking about learning from your mistakes and accepting that you were imperfect and accepting that mistakes are part of the territory. However, I'm not inviting you to reinvent the bicycle. That's why I want you to have a conversation with me. You don't have to figure everything out yourself. I'm not going to give you a formula, but I am going to give you guidance and mentorship so that you can find your own path. That I will create a container that will support you. And I will help you to put together all of your experiences to create the program that works for you. Does that sound good? And yes, you're going to make some mistakes. Some of it's going to be in creating the program, so you have to learn, but this is a dynamic living thing. And yes, you're going to make some mistakes in how to market your program. And that's part of the journey. And I'm going to be there to guide you through it, to teach you how to show up authentically, because that was one of my biggest challenges. When I started speaking, and I have been speaking and doing presentations for over 20 years, one of the learning curves I had was in speaking authentically. I had this amazing brain, and I would come up with all these amazing ideas that, of course, I would want to throw at people, dazzle them with my brilliance. Mostly they were kind of like deer in the headlights, and although some of them were really fascinated by what I had to say, they didn't really want to work with me because they didn't know who I was. So that has been my journey, is to lower the waterline, take risks, and share who I am. And the good news is, I'm probably just a little bit further than you are, which means that I know exactly what you need. I know exactly how to help you, because I have experienced it very recently. I got to check my notes. Hold on. So one of the problems with making mistakes is it stimulates the mad inner child. So imagine this. As a child, you were born into a family and your parents put conditions on their love. Or maybe you're neglected. That was my issue, is that I was neglected. I was also temporarily abandoned. And in those early years, from birth to about 3 to 5 years old, small little events can have huge impact because your brain is just developing. And you make decisions and you develop patterns that keep you safe. Hey, you survived childhood, right? It worked, yes? So why change? Well, because as you grow into adulthood, that people-pleasing, well, that was what I became, a people-pleaser and a perfecter, they don't work so well. They develop imbalances in your life. For me, I worked really hard. In fact, being a perfectionist, it enabled me to get my PhD. It enabled me to get National Honor Society, Phi Beta Kappa, PhD. I was one of 2 students in my graduate class to earn a PhD. And I got my first teaching job, and I was all excited, and I was going to get it perfect. And then it didn't work. I actually lost that job. I was devastated because my program, my formula, didn't work anymore. And you know, I never stopped to ask myself, well, was that job right for me? Or could I learn how to do this better? I just ran away. Have you ever done that? Have you just run away because the humiliation, the shame that you feel from making a mistake is so overwhelming that you just need to get out of Dodge? Well, that's what my dad taught me, right? So that was my first nudge from the universe that I maybe needed to be doing something else. So then I started working in group homes with emotionally disturbed children. And I have to tell you that took every ounce of my intelligence and brilliance. And I actually had to learn how to nurture, which was something I knew nothing about because both my parents were narcissists. They didn't know the first thing about nurturing. My father was the youngest and my mother was an only child, and she was a latchkey child. So neither of them knew how to teach me how to nurture. You know who I learned from? I learned from my Siamese cat how to nurture. Yeah, isn't that hilarious? A tomcat. But he taught me how to nurture. And sometime I'll tell you, it's in the anthology book that I'm in, which is called Animal Legacies. It's an amazing story about how a male cat taught me how to nurture. So there's always this, you make mistakes, you're in a situation that compels you to either move forward or to give up. Now, actually, the mistake of giving up is a much worse mistake than whatever you make along the lines. Everything you make in terms of your empowerment is actually something that you can utilize in helping your clients. So that's the secret of mistakes. So let's see, what else do I have? So I told you that our parents teach us how to handle mistakes. My father was afraid of getting criticism, so he would run away. But I also saw it directly in how he handled things. Like we used to go out and fly airplanes. You know, those model airplanes with a line. I mean, we're not talking radio controlled airplanes. We're talking the old-fashioned kind with a little motor and the line. And every now and then the plane would break. And my father would always go, "Damn it to hell." And then he would have to fix it. And I was terrified that I would ever break his airplane. That if I broke his airplanes, I would lose his love. And worse than that, I would have to fix it. And I didn't know how to fix it. So I was very cautious. And I never did loops. And I never did anything out of the ordinary because I didn't want to make a mistake. Now my mother, she was a toy designer. And she had all this artistic stuff, and she really encouraged her daughters, her children, to be creative. But then, because of my father, I was always insecure, so I would always invite her to help me. Not to mention that I had two older sisters who seemed better than me and seemed more successful. And because I was kind of like the third child and sort of the forgotten one, I figured I wasn't good enough. Does that sound familiar to you? So I would get her to step in. Now this, by the way, mothers, parents out there, if you're listening to me, don't do that to your children. Get them to do it themselves. It's really important for them to develop that self-confidence. More important than them getting an A in school, guaranteed. That development of self-confidence is essential. So that has been my learning curve, is how to develop that self-confidence, how to step up, how to try things out, even if it's not perfect, and say, okay, it's good enough. Now, do you remember, I mean, if you're a perfectionist like me, that when you were in school, it was like either you got an A or you didn't know what to do. I mean, I remember somebody was like, why do you work so hard? Can't you just be happy with a B? I said, I don't know how to get a B. It's either an A or I'm going to fail. So I always got A's. So in order to be a healer, in order to be an influencer, a change maker, to make a real difference, to be a true leader, to help save this planet, you have to become yourself. You have to become authentic. And the way to do that, well, have a conversation with me and I'll talk to you about it. But number one is you have to give up worrying about being imperfect. So if you're ready to make your life over, if you're ready to step into something more powerful, if you're ready to take all of your wonderful experiences and channel it into an amazing program for you to serve your people, let's have a conversation. Let me help you to get over your stuff about making mistakes, about being who you really are, of finding out who you really are and creating a program that is aligned with who you are, that is aligned with your life, that is aligned with your mission and why you're here. That's all for today. Hope you enjoyed this. Bye for now.